Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Holly Randall Unfiltered. So today, my guest went from being an ER nurse to having over 500 million views on the site we affectionately call Pornhub in just a few years. And it all started when she and her husband wanted to spice things up in the bedroom. Now she's a full-fledged hot wife, a top 5 amateur creator, and a Vixen contract star. Welcome, Serenity Cox.
Hey, thanks, Holly.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So, Serenity, you started off as a nurse in the ER.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that because, I mean, the emergency room is an intense place. You must have seen a lot of things.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. So I've been a nurse for 16 years. Pretty much all of that was spent in the emergency department. I'm from Toronto. I work in a trauma center, see a lot.
Wow.
I say I work. I just recently left the profession.
Right. Okay.
So just this year. So.
Okay. I know a lot of nurses who have transitioned over to adult, and I feel like there's an element of like nurturing and taking care of someone in both professions, I think.
Yeah. You know what? I've never thought of it from that.
I think there's a little bit of crossover there.
Yeah. But I have noticed since I delved into this other industry that there's a lot of healthcare professionals or former healthcare professionals. Mm-hmm. You're right.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And then the funny thing is that the job that most people go into, if they're able to get a job after leaving adult, is they become a realtor.
Is that right? Maybe that's my next step.
Maybe. I mean, you know, it's a full life cycle.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about working at a trauma center in an ER. Like, what's some of your horrible stories? We love horrible stories.
Oh, I know. I feel like I shouldn't, though. I feel like I should keep the horrible stories to myself. But it's busy. There's not enough people to handle it all. It's just always going, so much adrenaline. But the best thing about it is that you work as a team. I had this core team that I worked with. They were amazing people. And it's kind of the thing that brings you back every day is like this team of people that you're like in it together, getting it done. And that's the part that I miss about it. Not the horrible things that we saw, but like these people, like it's a good group of people.
Did you find that you would get kind of like, I don't want to say jaded, but you had to acclimate to some of the things that you saw, right? Like, was there any dissociation? Because that's got to be really hard emotional.
It's a fine balance. There's always this sort of, like, you still want to have compassion, but you don't want to be completely destroyed emotionally. So you have to kind of walk that fine line where you care, but you don't get, so invested that you can't function in the moment. So, yeah.
I was in the ER, unfortunately, a few months ago with my mother, actually. And while we were there was some guy who I think like had an enlarged bladder or something. And he was like one curtain over and he was just like crying for pain medication for like the whole time we were there. It was really like horrific. And, they would be like, it's coming as fast as we can. And then they just put him in a corner and then he's just like, anybody help me. And I swear that like haunts me still. And I know that the nurses aren't not compassionate people, but it really like made me think about how hard it is to try to handle all of those people and everybody's got an emergency. My sister's an ICU nurse, as I mentioned to you. So like, I've kind of talked to her about it. You just like have to kind of like suck it up and do your job.
Yeah. And it's so true. It's like the prioritizing who's in the most dire need of help at that very moment. And even though somebody else might be in a ton of pain, somebody else might be dying. And it's like, you don't want to leave that person waiting, but you kind of have to until something else is dealt with. So it's, there's a lot of that, unfortunately.
Yeah. So how did you go from working as a nurse into the adult industry? You started exploring like new sexual adventures with your husband. Is that right?
Yeah. So my husband and I, we've been married for 8 years, started off as like a monogamous couple, just the two of us. We've always had a really fun sex life. But in the last, I think it was about 4 years ago now, we decided to kind of go down a new path. And that's the hot wife, as they call it, path. Over the years that we've known each other, our, I guess, sort of bedroom role play always kind of came back to these themes that were like hot wife themes. And so we would role play it, and it was something that developed kind of slowly over the years, but we never actually went out and actively participated in involving other people in our relationship for years and years. But it was always like, that was like our fun role play. And that's what would really get us both going. There was a lot of factors that kind of like made us decide, let's just do this. A lot of it was like, there was the pandemic. The pandemic changed a lot of people's dynamics in their relationships.
Yeah.
It also, people were bored, people were at home, people were experimenting with new things. It was also even just my workplace, like I needed an outlet, something outside of this crazy, COVID pandemic emergency, all this stress and unknown and fear. And then come home and some people had outlets that were, hobbies or sports or activity or yoga.
Baking bread. A lot of people were baking bread during COVID.
I said, screw it to the bread. Let's have a better sex life. Let's do crazy, kinky things. So that was sort of our at-home outlet. I remember specifically, I had some girlfriends who were dating, and they were telling me about how much better dating during the pandemic was, because when you meet somebody online, there's no pressure to meet them in person, and you get to kind of have these conversations in text without getting together, because everybody was scared of being in person with people. And I used that stuck with me. And my husband and I decided, why don't I make like a Tinder account and I can start flirting with guys, and nobody's going to expect me. I can be like, oh, pandemic, sorry, I can't come over.
Yeah.
We're just going to flirt a bit.
Yeah.
And that was the first step into sort of evolving our sex life into not just role play, but involving, I guess, other forms, like actual people, but from a safe distance, just over the phone. Like I would be, sexting or something. And then my husband and I would have this like amazing sex afterwards. So that was sort of the first step into it. It was a safe way to involve other people without involving other people, And I won't mention which girlfriend it was, but she doesn't realize that she was the one who inspired me to start doing that. And after that, I started, talking to more and more guys. And eventually we were like, this is so exciting. And my husband was like, I am okay if you want to meet up with one of these people that you've been talking to for a bit. And so I did. And that was like 2020, I think. And after that, we were officially a hot wife couple. And I would go out and see other men and come back home, and my husband and I would just have a great time together afterwards.
Wow. So for those people that don't know exactly what hot wifing is, could you explain it?
Right. So a hot wife is I just find it a funny term as well. Like I don't know who invented that, but anyway, a hot wife is usually a female partner of a married couple who is encouraged and supported by her husband to go out and have sexual relations with other people, men and women. Enhances their relationship together. Some people confuse it with a cuckold relationship, which involves a lot more sort of humiliation or degradation towards the husband. But in our relationship, we don't do that. He's equal to me, and we all kind of have fun and enjoy it.
The first time I'd really delved into the world of hot wifing was, of course, when I had Holly Hot Wife on, who I'm sure you know. And then she explained to me that her husband is called the stag, right? And so then the woman comes home and the stag kind of like reclaims her, right? And he gets excited about the idea of you being with somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very much the same. So that kind of leads to how we started creating content, because a big part of what I would do when I would go out on a date with another man, at first I would just come home and I would describe it all to my husband, and he loved it. And that would, lead to our, intimate times. But then I started doing, recording it. So I would send him like videos and photos.
So I'm assuming the guys you went out with knew about this, right? They knew you had a husband at home. And
everything's laid out.
Yeah.
Everything's very clear from the beginning. I'm not trying to trick anybody or give anybody the wrong idea. So I would tell them, this is my relationship that I have. Are you comfortable with it? And obviously as well with video, is it okay if I send some clips to my husband? We'll keep your face out of it. I just want to show him the good time that we're having. And most guys that I went out with were completely fine.
I was
going to
say, I'm sure you didn't have a lot of people that said no.
No, there wasn't a lot of problems with that, especially because at that time it was just to send to my husband.
Right.
So that just became our dynamic. Be like, I'd go out, take these filthy videos, exciting videos, and then bring them home to my husband. And then just over time, it sort of evolved. We met some friends who were comfortable with my husband being involved and actually being present. And that was the next level of it. And the way he enjoyed being present would be to be the videographer.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're not just sitting there. You're like actively involved, but in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, this was like, it was such a slow process, but like, it was like every new experience, there was like a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more exciting. So he would come and he would video, and he'd get involved as well. But we would make these videos, and they were just for us at that time, until we discovered the first platform we discovered was FetLife, and we made some profiles on there, and it was like I wore a mask, my face was covered, and we put these like photos and videos, and it was exciting because it wasn't just for us. Like that part was more my husband's fantasy and like his kink, and I mean it was really exciting for me because I got to experience all these other men and like try new things. But I was really liking the exhibitionist side of it, like people watching me, whether it be my husband or just people like the men that I was meeting. So we started posting on this silly website and started getting a lot of feedback and a lot of followers. And that just kind of like drove the fire to like keep on going and keep on making content and make more interesting content and better, clearer, better quality. So that kind of drove us, and we gained a following on FetLife. And then one day we were like, wouldn't it be, it was almost as a joke, like, wouldn't it be funny to just put one of our videos up on
Pornhub. We're at 15 minutes.
Okay.
So you can say Pornhub now.
So we're like, let's just put a video up like as like a naughty little like secret thing. We'll put it on Pornhub and just see what happens. And so we did, and it became really popular. I think it was just like the right time, the right genre. Like again, it was still like, this is only a year into us actually having these experiences. So it was still kind of like deep in the pandemic, and people were interested in different things and watching a lot more.
Too.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just like the right time, right place. Our video got really popular. So we started putting more on. And it just took off. We started a channel. Like I didn't even have the name Serenity Cox. We were called Hot Wife Adventures. It was just like a channel name. And then as it became more popular, we're like, oh shoot, I have to be a person. And we made like an actual decision. Like, okay, this isn't us just screwing around and putting it online. Like we're actually making almost like a business, or it was still a hobby at that time, but
you're getting paid for it.
But we started getting paid for it, which I didn't realize that when we first put it up until I started like playing around on the site, and there was like the part that tells you what you're getting paid, and I forget what it was. It was like a couple $100 or something. I remember looking at my husband being like, "We're making money from this. Like, we're making money." Like as little as it was at first, it was really exciting. I'm like, I didn't realize it. He knew because he knew. He's like, yeah, we're making money. Like, who are you? Like, I knew nothing about the adult industry. I knew nothing about like amateur content creation, like nothing. We were just like having a good time and being genuinely excited for ourselves by the feedback we were getting from people who were watching it.
I mean, those are like the right reasons to get into the adult industry, right? It's so interesting because for you, it's kind of opposite. Like a lot of people get into the porn industry for money. And then maybe they find that they like enjoy it, or maybe they learn to enjoy it, or maybe they enjoyed it at the time, but like you went opposite. You're like, you got into it because you enjoyed it. And then you're like, oh, there's money? What?
You know what I found out before I found out about the money was they had the Pornhub model rewards program where you get free swag when you get so many subscribers. That's what drove my interest.
You wanted that Pornhub jacket?
I was like, I want the porn that I will never wear in public anywhere because nobody at that time knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was like, I just want the swag, the branded swag. And that's what drove it. And I hit those milestones quicker than I expected. And I was so excited about like my water bottle and like, my hat. I'm like, yeah, okay, the couple $100 is fine, but like the swag is where I wanted.
We love that Pornhub swag.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what drove it at first, and then obviously afterwards it became a business.
So when you started your channel on Pornhub, were you still hiding your face, or were you showing it?
That lasted a few months.
Okay.
I wasn't telling, like nobody in my social circle knew what we were doing, like family and friends, work. Nobody knew at first, because there really wasn't a need to tell anybody. It was just our we had never been the type of people that really even talked about our sex life with our friends. So which is why down the road, it was a bigger surprise when people did find out. We blocked our geographical area.
Yeah.
I know there's ways around it, which I found out later.
Yeah.
But it made us feel more comfortable. So we blocked like the province of Ontario where we live.
Mhm.
And then I started showing my face.
Mhm.
And yeah.
So when your videos started going viral, did you have like a moment of panic when you're like, oh my God, so many more people are seeing this than I expected? And you started to realize that people in your life might recognize you?
A little bit, yeah. There was a moment of panic, but there was more excitement than there was panic. The excitement of how many people were enjoying it outweighed the panic about people finding out. And we ended up getting like the one thing I really liked about these platforms where people can interact and comment, as much as, there's always the troll comments. There was a lot of like really nice, really genuine comments. And I found people were on average really nice and supportive and encouraging. And as much as it was like the like sexual excitement of feedback from people, it was also this kind of heartwarming, just hearing people say like, hey, this is the kind of relationship that I have with my spouse as well. And like seeing content out here that people are doing what we're doing, makes us feel like this is more normal. And a lot of, and comments from women as well, saying like, seeing, a girl out there looking like she's genuinely enjoying what she's doing. Those kind of comments, that really make you feel good about what you're doing. And so I kind of, instead of looking at it just from, this is for us, me and my husband and our enjoyment and our friends that we are filming it with, it was also, I was like, this is a platform where I can represent, a sexual woman enjoying herself. And this is a platform where I can represent a couple who, an alternative style of couple who are happy and it works for them. And so I thought this is kind of an interesting way to just kind of put out, alternative relationship dynamics and like, female positivity in sex. And I started having those kind of thoughts as well. And I was like, this is a good thing.
Yeah. So obviously this works for you. There's always people who can't wrap their head around the idea of like a non-monogamous relationship. So how do you guys manage that? Like, do you have boundaries? Is there a lot of communication going on?
Yeah. In the very beginning, it was a lot of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
I am very secure in my relationship with my husband. Like we have a really good relationship. We weren't always the most communicative people, but it was really fun to kind of learn how to communicate. My husband's very, who doesn't hate that I'm saying this, very stereotypical British guy, doesn't like have his, feelings exposed and out there.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really nice to like he had to, like he was forced to have to tell me how he was feeling about things, and not hold it inside because otherwise it's not going to work. So if I did something that he was uncomfortable with or that made him feel a certain way, he had to tell me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we learned a lot about ourselves as a couple. We made some rules about, because it's different when we're not both exploring.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I'm going out with guys and he's not going out with other women. Yeah, it's an interesting set of rules that we have to have because I have to make sure that he feels okay. I'm not crossing any boundaries with guys. So we definitely had a lot of conversations in the beginning. I mean, we didn't even know, you don't always know what's going to be okay or what's not going to be okay until you kind of cross that line. And then you're like, that wasn't good. Like,
now we know.
Now we know.
Put that on the list.
Won't do that again. Yeah.
Yeah. Does he ever go out and experiment with other girls without you or?
Not without me. We've been in group situations before where, all together, like he'll play with the other girls in the group situation. But not in the same way that I do. Like I'll go out on a date with a guy just privately. Like he won't go out with a girl that way. Not because we have rules against it, more just because our enjoyment is me coming home from my date and that kind of works for us.
Use that way. That makes sense. So does your husband show his face on camera at all or is he, no?
No, he's, for most of our videos, he's behind the camera. So it's his POV basically.
Right. Okay.
But he also doesn't want to have his face on camera.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, as long as we have his penis, right?
As long as his penis.
That's all we need. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about how Serenity got into doing studio work and how she got signed to Vixen. So stick around. We'll be right back. Are you tired of feeling like you're not living up to your full potential in the bedroom? Do you want to fuck like a porn star with confidence and stamina? Look no further than Blue Chew. These powerful tablets are designed to give you stronger erections and help you last longer, so you can satisfy your partner and yourself like a pro. Imagine being able to go all night without any worries or disappointments. That's what Blue Chew can do for you. The best part? It's all done online, so you can avoid those awkward doctor visits and pharmacy lines. You'll speak with a licensed medical professional who can determine if Blue Chew is right for you. You can take Blue Chew anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever the opportunity arises. And don't worry, Blue Chew is made in the USA and shipped directly to your door, so you can trust the quality and convenience. No more excuses, no more disappointments. With Blue Chew, you can unlock your full sexual potential and become the porn star you've always wanted to be. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew for free when you use our promo code HOLLY at checkout. Just pay $5 in shipping. That's bluechew.com, promo code HOLLY to receive your first month for free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And thank you, Blue Chew, for sponsoring the podcast. All right, guys, thank you so much and welcome back. So, Serenity, you obviously are experiencing a lot of success on the Pornhub platform. How did that transition into shooting for studios?
So last year, one of the casting people from Vixen reached out to me through Twitter, and told me about a new channel that they were introducing called Milfy.
Mm-hmm.
It was early in 2023, and at that time, I was a little bit unsure. I didn't say yes right away.
Were you still working as a nurse at this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rewind to the nursing thing. It had all come out at work, and was fine.
did.
It was fine by that point.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to hear that. So maybe we jump into that before we start talking about moving to the studios. Like,
sure.
How did everybody? Yeah, I mean, how did everyone at work find out? How did that come out? Why did you decide to leave?
And the leaving didn't have anything to do with it coming out. It was actually, people were really good about it. So, me thinking I'm super smart and blocking Ontario from viewing my Pornhub, obviously people have VPNs and things to get around it. It's not foolproof. Somebody had seen, like, it was getting really popular and a lot of views. It was hard to keep people from seeing it.
Yeah.
So somebody at work found it, shared it. Word got around. And originally it was our union rep who came to me and was like, so, there's, some word of some things that are out there on the internet. And she was concerned for me that it was not okay to work my job while this stuff was out there. And that, her initial reaction was take it down. And then I questioned that. Like, I think she was genuinely concerned for me. I questioned it. I was like, are you telling me that because it's your opinion that I need to take it down? Or is it because there's actually a rule that says you can't be doing adult content and working this job? She wasn't entirely sure. So she sent me to the next, the higher up person, her boss.
Oh my God.
Who also was like, I think you need to take it down. But I'm like, I don't want these I think you need to answers, right? I need concrete, if there's a conflict with my workplace, I need to know about it or work around it somehow. But I'm not just going to take somebody's gut feeling, or, their concern. So she put me in touch with the legal department.
Oh my God.
There's just, and at the time, I'm thinking about it and I'm like, I don't use my real name. I don't do anything that has to do with my workplace. I don't do, nurse cosplay porn. What I'm doing is legal. There was nothing. So I'm like, what? And I started reading through all the fine print. And when I, first signed on to my job, being like, is there something in the terms and conditions? And I'm racking my brain being like, am I doing something? I didn't realize I was doing something wrong. So I had a bit of panic at first. And then my meeting with the lawyer from the College of Nurses legal team, she called me and I told her what the issue was. And she was like, I wish I could remember what her name was because she was so great. And I could just hear the excitement in her voice because she's so used to having these medical practice issue, legal issues at the hospital. And she'd never been asked about adult content and if it was a conflict. And she was so excited to do research with me to find out if there was any issues with that because she was like, this is way more interesting than the stuff that people usually use me for at the hospital.
Yeah.
So she went off. She called me the next day and she's like, I can't find any reason why you can't. She's like, what you're doing is legal. And like the things that I listed, I'm not in any way involving the hospital or my job. So she gave me that answer. I was like, yes, I'm going to keep doing it. I went and talked to my manager at work. I was like, this is what I'm doing. Some people at work know about it. And my manager was amazing. She was just like, honestly, she's like, you do you. What you do in your personal time is your business. She's like, just come to me if anybody at work treats you any differently because of it. And that's not okay. So she's like, I've got your back. Like, at the end of the day, I'm a good employee. And, this is my personal life versus my work life. It doesn't have anything to do with it. So
that's an amazing reaction because I know, so I don't know if you heard about this, but there was a case in Oregon and I can never remember her last name. But she was, her name was Nicole, and she was in the adult industry for like a year, decided it wasn't for her, left and went and got a real job, as so many people, yell at sex workers to do. And she was going to school for nursing, and she got kicked out of school because they found that she had done porn in her past. She wasn't doing it anymore.
Just in her past.
Right? Just in her past. And they like pushed her out of the school, and she ended up suing the school and she won.
Nice.
Which was really kind of amazing. And it's just so interesting to me that, these people were coming to you and saying, well, you should probably take it down. But they didn't think about it, right? They didn't think it through. They just thought sex work and like.
It was like a panic reaction.
Yeah, exactly. Like sex work and healthcare. Like you can't do these two things, even though they're completely separate, without actually looking at the fine print or like, is this an illegal thing? And, why should it be illegal, right? Like there's no actual real reasons besides your own bias. And so it's interesting that you had to go through all those levels. And I love that you challenged them. Mm-hmm. And they were like, oh, I don't know why I feel this way. I don't know why I'm saying these things, I guess. Maybe you should talk to somebody else who would know why. So that's really interesting to me. And I'm glad that you had that experience.
I am too. Like it made me feel so much better about, I mean, not that I felt... I never felt any shame or I never felt bad about what I did, but I was very aware that people have misconceptions and have a lot of biases about it. I know that there's, the history of the industry isn't always, has not always been in a good light. But I was just really happy that like that's how it turned out. And that was kind of the trigger that, we got rid of the geo block on Pornhub. Mm-hmm. Because I have all these discussions with my husband when these things happen. And we're like, us hiding it kind of gives into that idea that it's wrong or that it's bad or that it's,
you're feeding into that stigma, right?
So why should we be trying to hide this from people? So that was the trigger to kind of open up more with, we didn't tell everybody right away, but it was like a slow process. But that was sort of, we're like, the more we lean into being like, yeah, this is what I do and it's okay and it's healthy and it's, it's a good thing and it can be a good thing, then, people have less fuel to be like, shame on you.
Yeah. When they see that like you're embracing it and you guys have a healthy relationship, it's harder, right?
Yeah. So like if I had been like, oh no, I'm going to take it down. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, then that's just
perpetuating that narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how did your family react?
That one was a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
Everybody's good now, but the initial, because again, they didn't find out from me, they found out through other sources. And anytime I talk to somebody and I tell them what we're doing, it's always received a lot better because they're hearing my side of what it is.
Right.
But when somebody who doesn't expect that from me finds it on the internet or through somebody else, they create, especially somebody in like, say, my parents' generation, they create a story of what exactly that is that's happening. That's not necessarily the real story.
Did people automatically assume blame to your husband? Like he was pushing you into it?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm
Yeah, because you're a woman and so you're the
Yeah,
victim
which
automatically,
infuriates
right?
me so much.
Oh, it's like my pet peeve.
Yeah, because obviously I'm a woman. I can't decide to be, I can't decide to be a sexual being, right? Like it
Right,
must be my husband who's forcing me to do these
right,
things with other men or like
right.
film it.
Yeah,
There was a lot of that,
yeah,
and I had to challenge a lot of those opinions on what we did,
yeah.
what we do.
That's definitely like my my biggest issue with the whole like porn is degrading to women because you never hear the narrative like porn is degrading to men, right? It's always
Yeah,
women because we're the victims.
yeah,
We're like the weaker sex. We don't actually like sex. We're not exhibitionists really.
yeah,
We're just like pushed into it by perverted men
yeah,
because we have like no agency over our bodies and we can't make decisions on our own.
yeah. And it's
Yeah.
so sad that it's still such a strong strong opinion
Yeah.
that's still out
But
there.
I think women like you, and coming out and talking about this kind of thing, I think is starting to change people's opinion, you know?
I hope so.
But it's important that you do say these things and you do like really emphasize like this is me, this is what I want to do. Because yeah, it's yeah, I that's exactly what I thought probably happened.
And I even my my poor mother, I had some we've always been really close, but we never had, conversations about we weren't the kind of mother and daughter that talked about like sex
Mhm.
and that sort of side of our lives.
Mhm.
So so I was forced to have like the most like I laid it all out for her, my poor mortified mother. But it was so healthy because after that, she was like, I get it. Like, I
Mm.
understand. And we've had some really interesting conversations and some really healthy and progressive conversations in the last couple of years since then. And I'm actually really proud of my mom for like some of the yeah, I think she's come a long way, like in her
Yeah.
views and her understanding and like her acceptance of a lot of stuff. That, a few years ago or more, we never would have had those conversations and she may not have had those thoughts. So yeah.
Would you say that she's proud of you now?
She has said it cautiously. There's always like a with a but. She's like, she's proud that like, about me, being like positive and doing something different or not the norm. She's like, it always has to be like, it's not something I would do, but
Mhm.
I'm
Yes.
proud that this is making you happy and that you're doing this. But
Yes.
yeah, it's always with the kind of the cautious, like, I'd be proud if it was something else too. Right?
No, I get that. I get that. So do you think that you would ever go back to a more traditional career path or do you think this is like your future?
I think I will. I don't think I'm out of the nursing game for life.
What made you decide to leave? Was it just like this was becoming like there was just more and more opportunity in this field and you thought, I really
Yeah,
want to
I
follow
held on
this?
to them both and I balanced it pretty well for a while, but things were getting more and more successful in the adult industry for me. Financially, I don't like to make it a financial thing, but like, I mean, I was working this shift work and these 12-hour shifts and saying no to opportunities that would have like made me a lot more
A lot
money
more money. Yeah, it's okay. We all know
nursing.
nurses don't make that much.
So yeah, so it was a lot of things. It was getting a little bit tough to balance. There was in the beginning of 2024, there was a lot of opportunities that came forward that I didn't want to feel held back. So I said, you know what, I'm taking a year off from nursing. I'm just going to say, yes to all of the things that come my way. See where we can take this career, this lifestyle, and then reassess in 2025. I don't think I will ever go back to full-time shift work
Hmm.
again, ever in my life, but I will go back to healthcare in some way.
Do you think that you'll have difficulty reentering the healthcare career market, or do you think that it'll be easy to get hired back?
Oh yeah, I don't think I'll have difficulty getting back into it. They're so desperate for nurses. Like nobody's gonna say no.
I mean that's great to hear because and maybe it's a Canadian thing because I know in America it's like it's been a problem for people.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've ever listened to the podcast, The Butterfly Effect by John Ronson. I wouldn't even call it a podcast. It's a long special couple hours, I think. Maybe it is a podcast. I don't know. Anyways,
Okay.
and it's actually about Pornhub specifically
Mm.
and all of these like little things that kind of spiraled off from things on Pornhub and an adult in general. And there was one male performer who was in porn, did it for a while, and then got into nursing and then got fired from his job because somebody recognized him as a performer, like at the hospital.
Mm.
And and I think that their excuse was something like, we can't be liable if somebody decides to like accuse you of like sexual assault or something, which is like crazy, right? Because isn't this that assumption that if you work in the adult industry, you must be like a sexual deviant in some way, and like you would sexually like
that's horrible.
like it's just crazy, right? So when I hear stories like that, it's just like infuriating. So I love hearing that, you know, you've had a much different experience.
Yeah, I think I've been very lucky in all of the aspects of my career path so far. I know it's not everybody's story, but I've been very fortunate.
Yeah. Maybe Canadians are just better than Americans. Maybe that's what it is. Better country.
One thing I do consider is maybe not necessarily going back into emergency, but I'm always interested in how I can kind of combine the two branches of my life, like sexual health. I have just in the past year, I've been volunteering at a sexual health clinic in my city. They're fantastic people. So once a week I go in and I just do it's not in a clinical role because I have a license there. I'm a volunteer, but just to be there and help them because they're such a good, they do a lot of like free services for new Canadians and a lot of sexual health teaching. And so I'm just kind of staying involved in that space. And, you know, the wheels are turning. Maybe there's something.
Yeah.
Something for
no, that totally makes sense. I mean, yeah, people definitely need their sexual health taken care of, especially people who work in the industry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conversation around that. So I can totally see that. So how has performing with your husband like affected your marriage? Like, would you say that you guys have a stronger bond now?
Yeah, we definitely have a stronger bond. It goes back to what I was saying before about the communication, the change in the communication. We're just a lot more open with each other and how we're feeling. And we really work well together as a team. So like we have this relationship, but we're also like a business now because we run, you know, the independent content that we do and the OnlyFans and all that stuff together. Yeah, it's really brought us closer because we have like not only a hobby, but like a business and a sex life, and it's it's fun. It's good.
All right. So tell me about your first studio scene. So someone from Vixen reached out to you, and what was the first scene you got booked down?
So they brought me in for their Milfy channel, which I didn't know anything. Like I said, every new step is a learning experience for me because I'm coming from a place where I knew nothing about porn. I knew nothing about any branches of the adult industry until we like jumped into it. So now this professional scene was a whole other thing. And I was like, I don't know anything about I didn't realize that Vixen was like huge as they are.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they were like, this is our new channel. It's called Milfy. They gave me like a free trial membership so I could watch some of it. And I watched it and I was like, holy shit. This is fantastic.
That's not what you thought porn was.
Yeah. Yeah. The episodes that I watched of Milfy, I'm like, these are clever. Like these women are like strong. They're funny. They're like interesting. And they're just like owning that sex. Like it was really cool to watch. So I said, yeah, I want to be part of it. They made the first scene that I did, a hot wife scene, so that I really appreciated that because it was something that I was comfortable with. I knew about. I wasn't just jumping into like a, you know, girl on girl orgy or something that like wasn't my thing. It was, they made a scene that was very much like what my husband and I do. Like there was like a husband character who was like watching me with my scene partner. And like I had to, I kept giggling because I was like, you know, this is like the pretend version of my actual life.
Yeah, it's like so meta.
But it was awesome. So yeah, that was the end of 2023. And I was hooked.
Yeah. Who did you perform with?
Like who's my scene partner?
Scene partner, yeah.
Dan Damage.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was great. Everybody was, I was almost just like I just felt like I don't know, kid in a candy store. I was just looking around, like absorbing everything that was happening around me because like even just like the crew working together so seamlessly. The director was Caden Cross, and like she was so cool and so passionate about the project. And I was just watching everybody and I'm like, oh yeah, I have to have sex. But like I was just, like a learning experience, just watching, something that I was so unfamiliar with, but just really excited about.
Isn't it funny too how like most of the day is not spent on shooting the sex?
Yes.
It's around everything else. Did that surprise you too?
Yes. And then I had to act, and I'm also I'm not an actor and I'm not a model.
Yeah.
So like I don't know how to pose and I don't know how to act, but I did those things.
Yeah.
Like they liked me. So I guess it went okay. I was like, I can have sex, but I had to learn how to do these other things. But it was really fun and everybody was really good about it. And everyone in the room knew that it was my first time doing anything like that. So they were all just like focused on making sure I was comfortable. And I really appreciated it, which is why I came back.
And then you ended up getting a contract. Is that right?
Yeah. In May this year. Yeah.
How many scenes had you shot with them before that happened?
I had done 3 scenes with them. That was it. And they had invited me to come back for this feature, this American MILF feature, for Milfy. And so they called me and were like, well, since you're coming for this feature, do you want to do a contract and we'll count these towards your scenes for the contract? And I said yes. Because I'm not really like, I was really excited about working with Vixen, but I'm also not, I'm like, my main thing is my amateur work and my home business. And we just like keep to ourselves and do our own thing. I'm not looking to, grind and work with a bunch of companies and like do a bunch of professional scenes. So the idea that I'd only work with this one company and I really like them anyway, they'd bring me in and do a few. And then for most of the time, I'm just back home in Toronto doing my thing. Like, this sounds like a very like chill, like like there wasn't a whole lot of expectation to like be,
it's a good way to be
and stuff all the time.
Introduced to the industry, and not a lot of people get that.
Yeah. So I said, yeah, it was.
So Vixen's the only studio that you've worked for?
I did do a browser scene.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which was a lot of fun.
Probably very different in terms of like just the script and everything.
Oh yeah, so different. Like Brazzers is hilarious.
Yeah.
Everybody was really nice. I loved working with them. The scene turned out really well. But when Vixen offered me the contract, I was like, when I think of myself as a consumer of porn, I loved the Brazzers and I had nothing bad to say about them at all. But I'm more just my own taste. I like the fantasy and the beautiful and that sort of more sensual.
It's a different
porn,
vibe, yeah.
As opposed to like the
surprised Brazzers face.
Like, I'm really glad that I did it, so that I could that's out there, and I think it looked really good. So it kind of like checked that off the list that I never knew I had.
Yeah.
But like as a consumer of porn, I'm drawn more to the Vixen style. So
yeah, that makes sense. Will you be going to AVN this year? Do you think?
Yes, I will.
Is that going to be your first time?
I went to the last AVN. I had a nomination for one of their Independent Creator Awards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I went for that. But
how'd you feel about it?
It was okay. That was the first time I'd ever been to the whole AVN convention and everything. A little bit overwhelming.
Yeah. A lot of people.
And I am, even though I am in this industry, I am more of an introvert type of person. So big room with like crowds. And I could never do like the signing and that sort of thing. I might down the road, but that wasn't my wheelhouse. So I went. The awards show was really cool. It was more just like a people watching and absorbing thing for me. So this year, I think it'll be better because I know more people. I'm more familiar with more people.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it is. It's a lot. It's very overwhelming at first. I've managed to avoid the show for many years, but I've been going for the last few years, and I will be there this year for sure. I don't know exactly where. Somewhere. My last question for you is, what advice would you have for men or women who are interested in introducing the hot wife kink into their marriage, but don't know how to approach it with their partner?
You just have to talk about it. I get this question a lot from people on OnlyFans and other platforms that ask me, and sometimes the wording of it, I'm not okay, so for example, I get a lot of guys saying, how can I convince my wife to do what you do?
Mm-hmm.
And already I don't like you. No, already I'm like, that's not like you already have the wrong approach because you're going at it like, I want to convince my wife to do something that maybe she's not interested in.
Mm-hmm.
You can't convince your wife to do it. You can have a conversation and say, this is what I think is really sexy, or this is a fantasy that I have. What do you think about that fantasy, or what are your fantasies? I think open a general conversation to fantasies and things that you might want to explore in your sex life. I don't think it should be a, hey, let's, if it's something that's far from what you've already done, I don't think it's ever healthy to just be like, let's do this like right away, because you haven't kind of like led up to that with anything else. So I don't think you should ever look at it like I'm trying to convince my partner to do something, because I don't think that's a healthy view. I think just start conversation, just open it up. Like for my partner and I mean, it was years before we actually did anything,
But it sounds like you guys
relationship.
had like a good communication dynamic before that. And I think that's probably what's missing in a lot of couples.
Well, that's it. We always talked about, things that turned us on. Like our sex life was always, even before we involved other people, our sex life was interesting for both of us. And we would, try kinky things and try fun things. And we were just open about what felt good, what didn't feel good. And I think that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had those kind of questions too. And then when I dig a little deeper, it becomes like, yeah, I have a sexless marriage. My wife like hates sex and she doesn't want to have sex with me. And I'm like, I don't know how you're going to make the leap from that to like threesomes or anal or whatever they're asking about. I'm like, if you're not having sex at all, like that right there is an issue. And I don't even know how you work on that, because what is that wrapped around? Like, does she not trust you? Does she have a lot of like shame around her sexuality? Is she overworked? Is she overburdened? Is she does she self-conscious about her body? Like there's so much there.
There's so many variables, and every relationship is completely different. And what works for one is not going to work for another. So I can't really give, hard, fast advice on how to, transform a relationship to something else beyond just talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to your partner. Imagine that. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Serenity. I do have some questions for you from my Patreon members, which we'll do in a separate segment, if that's okay.
Thanks.
And then can you let everybody know where they can find you online and see all your content?
Yes, absolutely. So Instagram, I'm serenitycox.official. Twitter, I'm serenitycoxto. And then I have my OnlyFans, which is just Serenity Cox. That's pretty much it. I mean, there's also Pornhub.
Yeah.
Just my name.
And then you guys can obviously find me on Instagram and on Twitter at Holly Randall. Go to hollylinks.com for access to all of my platforms. And of course, if you want to watch these episodes streamed live and get access to bonus Q&As like we're about to do now, go to patreon.com/hollyrandallunfiltered. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you're listening to this on any podcast platform, leave a comment, leave a rating. Would really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. And I will see you on the next one.